So, welcome back for day two of training on Azure 900 and preparation for the same. We will begin with a quick recap on what we covered on day one, followed by what is agenda for the day. So, we're going to get into the bit of the core concepts of Azure Cloud and various compute services that are available in today's session, which is focused around Azure regions, virtual machines, and we'll end with a practical step-by-step guide on how to create a new virtual machine from Azure portal. So, a quick recap. Yesterday, we basically focused on the basic concepts of cloud computing and understood different types of clouds that are available, cloud services like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and various other concepts. We also understood a bit about shared responsibility model and pay as you go or consumption model for the payment. We dived into comparison between capex and opex to understand how cloud helps business with respect to their initial investment and expenditure. Today, and rest of this training will be more in on the Azure side for you to understand various compute and compute services, storage, identity, basically to give you an idea of basic services that are available in Azure and why and how they are utilized in Azure. So today we're going to focus on uh, Azure regions and how they are set up and understand various concepts around Azure regions before getting into compute services and then focus on the virtual machine side for the day. And tomorrow we're going to cover the app services, containers, and various other services available to uh, deploy and manage your applications. So let's begin by understanding the architect Azure components and Azure services. And the objective here for us for next half an hour would be to focus on regions, availability zones, data centers, understand a bit about how they are all uh, set up and configured in Azure, followed by compute services. So Azure is available across the world and it is segregated. Azure is identified as into in various regions. So region is something that is made up of one or more data centers in a particular continent, a particular country, in a very close proximity to each other. So this is the idea of this is to provide the flexibility and the scaling that is required and to avoid any latency in the application or latency in the data access required for users closer to the customer. So with this regions, depending on your requirement and compliance, you may have to configure your data replication and where do you want to reside the data. If data replication is required, how do you enable the data replication to ensure data compliance, whether it's PII information or everything else is managed. And there are up to 60 regions across Azure where Azure data centers are available, spread across 140 countries, and these Azure regions keep changing. We keep adding new regions as and when required. So you need to look at the latest report to see where is it. Yeah. So now we'll look at something known as availability zone. Availability zones are basically uh, part of a region wherein there is a every region has multiple data centers, and each data center is then paired or segregated into zones wherein one region may have a data center in US West, US North, and let's say US Central. So now all these three could be a part of the same availability zone. Now availability zone is used with respect to configuring your backups or configuring your uh, 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 even disaster recovery in a case to ensure the application downtime and the data downtime is close to zero, which means that any application deployed and managed in availability zone 1 in most cases is automatically replicated to other availability zones for the purpose of backups and recovery. And you can again configure it across which how many availability zones, and some of it are predefined. So example, in a given region, if there are three availability zones, all the backups and data will be automatically will be taken care across availability zones in some of the services, and in some you may have the flexibility to decide whether to replicate it across all availability zones or one. But availability zone are basically a group of data centers in a particular region who replicate and who manage the data for all the applications deployed in that particular region. Now, with availability zone available at the region level, so each region which has multiple data centers will have availability zones. Now we look at what is known as region pairs. Now, region pair is a next higher level of pairing wherein two regions are mapped or paired together for any or default replication or disaster recovery. Some of the condition here would be uh, a region pair is something which is around 200 to 300 miles separation for it to be considered as a region pair. And any region pair will have automatic replication of data application access. The recovery will be prioritized based on the region pairs, and any updates to the application or any changes in the infrastructure of the application will be rolled out across all the region pairs sequentially. And every now if you see here, there is a region pair of between north central and south, east US to west US, and in India south to in with India central. So the region pair are predefined based on the conditions, and you will in some cases when you're creating a storage, when you're creating some of the compute services, you will have the option to choose the region pair which you want to uh, configure. One region can be paired with multiple regions, so you will have the option to choose the region pairing. So now with this availability zones and region pair, one key point to know is what is known as some of the regions are secure, like Azure government and Azure China. Now, whenever we are configuring availability zones or regions or Azure regions, and then set up your replication and data backups and recovery, it's important to know you will not be able to uh, uh, pair or configure backups for some of these sovereign regions like Azure government or China. So they have a separate instance of Azure which is physically separated from the public clouds that we use, and access is also controlled to authorized personnel. Same with Azure China, where it's again a separate instance in China, and any data created as part of Azure China always stays in the China for the compliance purpose, and it's a separate architecture and design to ensure to if any integration is required from a external data center into Azure China. So the key part here is to know that when you're talking about regions pair and availability zones, uh, we need to keep in mind of Azure government clouds and Azure China and various regions there to ensure uh, compliance is not uh, is not an issue. So with that background and with that understanding of regions and availability zones, now we'll focus on or go around the compute services which Microsoft Azure provides, and will right from application services to data and then various other services in the upcoming days. And today we'll focus on the application compute services such as your virtual machines, desktops, and app services, containers, Kubernetes. So these are the on-demand computing services that provides resources needed to uh, build, deploy, and run applications that is accessible to the end customer. So virtual machine is typically something that we use on when you're looking to lift and shift an application from on-premise to cloud. You create a virtual machine, deploy your applications similar to on-prem, and then make it work on the cloud. So virtual machine is something that basically which emulates a physical computer, and everything from memory to storage and networking. So virtual machine typically comes under infrastructure as a service provider, service cloud type, which means that if you get a bare minimum hardware virtual machine infrastructure, and then it's up to you to manage the operating system, application deployment, and have it ready for customer to use. So for this session, rest of this session will focus on virtual machine, and tomorrow we'll focus on the app services, containers, and Kubernetes. So as I said, virtual machine is something that emulates a physical computer, and it's something that provides you infrastructure service. So now we'll also look at when we say virtual machine, we are also talking about scale sets. Scale sets are basically load balanced virtual machines, a group of virtual machines which are load balanced with the ability to scale in and scale out depending on the traffic and the need of the application. So we typically configure virtual machine scale set at the time of creating a VM or link an existing VM into a scale set. So now availability sets are again are something where if you want to ensure the availability of your application is up for without minimal or no downtime, you need to configure availability sets to ensure there is always a backup service available whenever the main VM goes down. So, so we need to we configure these fault domains and in a virtual machine to ensure there is a backup VM available, or requests are sent to the backup VM when the main VM is down. Now, as a recap, what we have done is we basically covered Azure regions and understood availability zones with region pairing. And finally, we looked into understood the basics of virtual machine, why it is useful, and understood scale set and uh, scale sets, as well as we understood availability sets to understand how virtual machine provides you the infrastructure as a service code. Now, what we'll do is we'll quickly go ahead and cover a quick guide on how to create a virtual machine and how to log in into the same. So here I have Azure portal where I have logged in. Now, if I go here and say virtual machines, and I'll go ahead and create a new virtual machine. So I can go ahead and choose I create a new resource group. First thing I need to choose is which is the resource group I where want to create this VM. So then the name of the virtual machine, right? So demo 01 and the region where you want to deploy the virtual machine. So this is the region where the primary virtual machine will be created. I'll select West US for now, and then you can also select in that particular availability zone or options the way you want to uh, take care of the availability. So here you can do by zone, virtual machine scale set, or availability set. So availability zone is where the Azure will take care of uh, replicating your VM across regions. Scale set, as we discussed, is a load balanced approach for multiple VMs across zones and fault domains, and automatically scales availability set is basically taking care of fault domains to ensure the requests are sent to the backup VMs if the main VM is down. So let me select virtual machine scale set. So what is now next? Once you set up that, now there is no virtual machine scale set I have created. So I can go here and say, uh, first go out here and create a virtual machine scale set. Okay, so now here we are talking about since I've selected US West US2, there are three zones where this particular zones are available. So let me select zone 1, all the zone 1 uh, data center will be used for this. Now, how do you want to, now next comes the orchestration mode. How do you want to increase scale in or scale out the VM? Is either it can be flexible or you can say optimized where you configure particular conditions and details that are needed. So I'm going to choose the default and then let me go here and set a standard. So security type is how do you want to secure your VMs and access to the VMs. Now image, I'll go and just select the default image Windows 16, or let me select something which is available, Ubuntu server. Let me select this standard. Okay. Now, so next I need to select the size, which directly impacts my cost. So let me go ahead and choose a particular option. And now next we're talking about how do you want to scale? Do you want to manually scale, wherein you provide a fixed amount of instances, or do you want to scale automatically based on the statistics on the VM, like CPU or a particular schedule or everything, or any other settings? So for now, I'm going to keep default manual, and now it's asking for username and password. So let me give a password here. Then I can basically set up all the conditions. Waiting for resetting. So now all the validations are successful. So I can go ahead and create the virtual machine scale set, which I can then use to create a new VM and link it or assign it to a virtual machine scale set. So let's wait for this to be complete. So if I go here I'll be able to see the status of this particular deployment. So it is now, so I don't want to discard any changes. So now if I check back on my virtual machine and if I do a refresh, it is still, I'm still waiting for it to be created. Let me create this out. Click OK and go to the deployment in progress. So if you notice here, once I said deploy virtual machine skill set, it has also created a basic networking, network security group, and the relevant VNets required to manage access to these virtual machines running in particular skill set, and that would help you to manage the access and security as well. So let me see if it is done. If I go back, no, it's still in progress. So while this is happening, let me go ahead and set up all other details of, if you see here, now depending on the scale set that I've selected, there are two VMs already created linked to the already in the process of creating. Here if you notice, there is the settings that I gave while creating the scale set, the same settings are applied, same size, operating system, everything is applied, and there are two VMs linked to the same to the scale set, which takes care of running both the VMs and establishing the connection. So as part of the scale set configuration, the VMs are also created with the settings, and you will have access to these VMs once the sales scale set creation is complete and everything. So this is a one way of creating a VM through scale set. Let's say if you don't want to use a scale set, you can still go ahead and the way I was initially creating, no scale set, let's say. So I can here go ahead and choose, okay, so select uh, availability. Here I've selected availability. Instead of scale set, I've selected availability zone. I selected two zones, zone 1 and 2, and I can go ahead and create a new VM, which is, right. So here I'm not using scale set, I'm using availability zones, and the settings remain the same. I selected the size. Now I can go here and configure my disks, whether you can add what kind of disk, HDD or SDD, and then you can add additional disks that are required, and followed by, if you want very specific different data sets or data disk that are required, you can configure. Networking is where you configure your VNets and connectivity and add it to a subnet on and manage the security to the VM. Here is where in Azure management, you configure your shutdown policy, your login to the VM with Azure Ready if you have Azure Ready accounts. How do you want to manage the backups? If I enable backups, it would say what is the frequency and various other details. Similarly, I can do monitoring where I can link this to an app insights or any monitoring systems to get me real-time reports and issues. And finally, I can go ahead and add a tag and go ahead and create. So whether you're creating a scale set or an availability zone, the key part here is to uh, select the right size, select the right software operating system, and then choose the if I go here and create. So if you choose the key part is your availability options. Depending on availability option, you will get additional settings to configure your zones or configure your skill set, and then and selecting your operating system with the size. So these are the three parts, and if you noticed, these two VMs are now ready. So if I go to one of the VM, and if you notice we have this public IP which I can use to connect. So let me copy here. So if I try to do a remote login and give the username password that I have configured, now it may not be possible. Okay, if I select native, yeah, let's say if I download the RDP, looks like the server is not yet up, but yeah, but you will be able to remote log into this system and configure and start using the application as you are intending to do. So now this is how what we have planned for the day with focus on virtual machines, scale set, already zones, and all the sets, and a practical guide around how to create a VM. Now, tomorrow as I said, we'll focus on app services and container instances, and we'll end with a practical guide on how to create an app service, various steps available, various steps needed when creating an app service or a container. We'll go in detail into that and get the default or the basic application that to ensure the app service is deployed successfully. So see you tomorrow. And any questions you have for today's session or in day one, feel free to post a comment, and I will ensure to respond to the same at the earliest with the clarification that you needed. Thank you.